keep doing that. Hello.
Hello.
All right, you made it. You got it now.
I can see. I'm blind.
Sweet.
Hey, Bucho, have you ever talked to Spatial Dragon?
Yeah.
I like Jesse to you, or is it only in my head?
A slow, yeah, like a more raspy Jesse.
I think I'm offended by that. I don't know. No.
Yeah, now that you say it, I hear more Jesse now or anything.
I heard.
Yeah,
Jesse?
now it's like Jesse's twin fucking doppelganger.
Oral Yanny thing.
So you taking notes, Tom, or what?
No. Do want to know is that seeing as how Sean has used basically every single wheel on the market, is the OSW as good as anything out there, or is it better, or is it not as good as a certain wheel, or what? Even though I know it's a review and it's not necessarily a comparison with other wheels.
Tom's gonna go for the Lee Bodner now. So cheap.
It's only $4,400.
Let's see. We can see him on YouTube. Damn it. Okay,
Why is that
what
link
happened?
not working right?
Yeah, I was gonna say you're not putting a link, buddy.
Paste it.
That's what I'm trying to do because I'm using.
That's it. I'm leaving. It's
screens.
not working.
Shoot, I have to resend the email. You
That I
guys.
don't want to see it there.
Bear with me.
I see your video looks. Wow, that
No,
camera's really, really nice.
This is still my webcam, but this is the result of streaming at a higher quality. Okay. Okay, so this is very informal, you guys. I'm not even live on the camera. I haven't turned on the main camera. I have two cameras set up. I don't mind. And then again, you guys are getting the unedited, chilling, out version of the show. I have my script on a computer over there because Nick wasn't a huge fan of the cards. And so hey, we're high tech. We don't have to have cards like a caveman. But my computer's a little further than I'd like it to be. But the whole point of this is me winging it, other than certain notes. Most of the time, if I need critical information that would be noteworthy, it's something that I would show you on camera simultaneous to saying it. So when I look over there and I say, Sim Racing Base, SimCube Model, OSW Kit, Bliss, BISC, obviously I'd be off camera at that point. So don't be alarmed when it looks like I'm looking over there, because that's by design. For the most part, I'm going to ask you guys to be quiet. At the end, I'm definitely going to turn to you guys and say, do you have any questions? And I don't want you to be shy. I don't care if it was even a redundant topic of the review, because I might cut parts of that and use it, and I might cut it out. Alright?
Okay.
If at any moment you see me doing something glaringly wrong, like I leave the mouse up here, definitely jump in and yell and scream. What else? Other than that, thank you guys. I mean, the patron team has completely changed the Simpit for me. The way we hang out, the way we interact, the way I feel like I'm more embedded in the sim racing world than just being a reviewer has changed my concept on how I want it all to be. And you guys have been a huge part of that, both in helping me make these decisions and creating this new community that makes it feel different. So I hope you understand the reason we're doing this like this is purely as a result of your guys' contributions and, I don't know, presence. So it's really cool. I'm excited and I'm shitting my pants because, man, I've been doing this for 10 years. I've always had a script. 10 years of doing this, hundreds of reviews, and I've always just, it was that easy. I mean, we even had teleprompters at times. I mean, talk about easy. This is totally out of the, fish out of water for me. But it's the vibe that I want. So cross my fingers, with your guys' help, I think it'll go well. Can somebody just double check either the patron email to see if the link I sent you is the right link.
Let me check.
Hey, Fabs.
I just got it.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, and I don't mind dragging my feet to get it started, too. I mean, I gave everyone kind of a 11 to 11:15, assuming I'd get the camera on at about 11 and then be live at 11:15 was sort of the logic. Before I do get started, any questions,
We're
comments, suggestions? Thank you, Dennis.
I think that the most important thing you need to remember is that you've been doing live shows every day, and you are really good in them. That the confidence that comes from having that experience is significant.
I agree. Thank you, Fabs. The difference and why I'm a little panicked is because on a pit stop and all those live shows I do, what I'm talking about is always right in front of my face. And yeah, I have all this right in front of my face, but I don't have little details that I'm supposed to remember. 10 by 7.5 by 5, that kind of crap. But that's, again, when I'm going to look over there. I don't have much notes, though. You'll see. And feel free to, afterwards, we'll have 2 phases of after, and then I'm going to get this going. Phase 1...
Email confirmed.
Say again?
Email confirmed.
Oh, thank you. Was that Heiko?
Yep.
Thank you, Heiko. Phase 1 is going to be when I get to the end. So I'll finish the whole review. I'll do my pros, cons, final thoughts. And then I'm going to say, do you guys have any questions? And then, jump in and we'll try to create some order. Doesn't matter. I'll edit it so we can clean it up for what I use of it. And then the second phase is when I'm done and I turn off the second camera. Then I'm going to, feel free to give me your thoughts and suggestions and opinions on the whole concept. Don't be shy and don't be worried about hurting my feelings. Just say it nicely. No, I'm kidding. If I forget to sit on my shirt and I look sloppy, scream. Anything that looks out of place, you guys can jump in and scream because I'd rather restart than do that. All right. Any other questions, thoughts, suggestions before I go?
Breathe.
Yeah, seriously. I was hoping you guys would have like an hour of questions so I could just not have to do this. I'm going to shut my door a little bit. We might get interrupted by the dog, just like the live shows. No avoiding that.
That's part of the Simpit magic.
I want to take a picture of what I'm looking at, and I'll show you guys.
It's all about being organic, Sean. That's all it's about.
Oh, good job. Don't make me blush.
Like that this morning?
Say what?
And
You like what I said
find it
in
really,
the show this morning?
Yeah,
I find it really cool that Sean can still get nervous producing something that he's been doing for such a long time. I love it. That to me shows how much he cares about it.
Oh, I'm freaking out fast. I have been sleepless nights because I did that the headphone review, but it was so insignificant. I was like, oh, I can't even screw this up because it's just not important. But I care a great deal about this review.
Well, think about it this way too, Sean. That this is not OSW didn't ask for this review. They didn't make you do this. Semi-Q, whatever you want to call them. This is just you giving a review to your crew, and that's it. Whoever wants to watch the video. So there's no pressure that way.
Exactly.
All right. I just posted a picture of how it looks, what I'm looking at you guys. On my left is my streaming computer. On my right is my notes computer. Dead center is 2 different the streaming camera and the real camera. And behind that, my clipboard and all my wiring I have 2 different banks of lights. All right, enough talk. Let me get the mic plugged in and double check that. The mouse is out of the way. We are live. And, hey, thanks again, you guys. Thanks for being part of the team. Bucho, thank you for the wheel. I'm going to thank you during the show as well. Wouldn't you know it, my script turned off. Hold on. Aye.
Should have gave him a shot of vodka before he started, calmed him down a little bit.
All right, I'm going to roll the camera. Audio looks good. Camera's rolling. That's a plus from the previous days. I now have a remote.
All microphones on?
Microphone's on. I see the audio. Set looks good, but I could have ironed it.
You straightened the sticker, it looks like, too.
No, these ones I got right. It's the other set that are messed up. This is actually a different spot than my rig.
Oh, that's right. I forgot.
Audio.
Say again? Okay. All right, here we go.
Yeah.
This is the Simpit. I'm your host, Sean Cole, but the real star of today's show is the Sim Racing Cube OSW steering wheel. And I'll give you some model numbers and all the important details, but this is a direct drive wheel, and it is a beast of a motor, and I have all sorts of things to tell you about this wheel. Now, the main thing, what is a direct drive wheel? I mean, the whole concept of direct drive wheel is semi-new to sim racing still, but it is the biggest thing in sim racing, and everybody wants one. It's the concept of taking a servo motor, a motor like this that's designed for conveyor belts or printing presses, heavy machinery, and figuring out a way to make this deliver the force feedback that we sim racers need. Now, we're accustomed to plastic wheels with just moderate amounts of force feedback, giving us the sensations of being in a car. But the real goal of a direct drive wheel is to actually give you the real life forces that any car on the market could deliver you one-to-one, getting you that much closer to the realism and the expectation that we really have as sim racers. So let's talk about the Sim Racing Cube, the OSW wheel by them. And the open source wheel is what OSW, and I keep calling it OBS by mistake, all these acronyms, but open source wheel is the whole concept of a company sourcing wheel, various different parts, and then using software that is constantly being upgraded. Instead of it being the Logitech, the Thrustmaster, the Fanatic, or even the Sim Experience or Leo Bodner's the world. This is more like open source, any type of software, where there are constant updates, a lot of different profiles from various users throughout the internet, and a whole lot of information, but it doesn't come packaged quite as spick and span as the things from Logitech, Thrustmaster, and Fanatic. So, let's talk about this wheel, what it costs, and what you're actually getting. Again, this is the Sim Racing Cube OSW kit, BIS C with the CM110 case. It goes for about 1,310. It goes for about 1,302 euro, or about $1,520 in the US. What do you get for your money? You get a Midge motor. It's a 30 Newton meter powered motor, and it measures in at 10 by 7.5 by 5. And I gotta tell you, this wheel, it actually weighs like a metric ton. I can't even lift it barely sitting here in front of you. It is the biggest, it is the heaviest wheel that I've ever tested, and at 30 Newton meters, it's also the strongest wheel that I've ever put my hands on. You also get a power supply that comes in a Cooler Master case, a motor mount which comes in 3 pieces, heavy-duty motor cables that come in at 8 feet long, 2 different 6-foot USB cables, and an emergency stop that is connected to the power cables that's actually a foot longer, coming in at 9 feet. All right, I have to move my script. How are we doing so far, guys?
Like it.
All good.
Yeah, good.
I'm actually learning stuff.
And again, at that moment where it looked like I was off to the side reading, well, that's when I want to show you close-up, beautiful shots of all this stuff anyway. It's not about me, it's about the wheel. I'm not the star of the show. I don't want to be on camera. This is the star of the show. So, all right, to be continued. Part 1 done. I don't think I said... Oh, I confused myself. God, did I say that correctly? I said wheel mount, 3-piece wheel mount, and I meant the actual mount, but then you also have the wheel mount. I can fix that right now. Okay. Bear with me, guys. Okay. And then finally, you get the wheel mount or wheel adapter that'll work with just about any standard steering wheel out in the market. Now, that doesn't give you any extras like shifters, button boxes, any of that kind of stuff. If you want to do that, you're going to have to come up with a secondary solution, which there are a lot of, but they usually come in at a pretty stiff price. Now, for testing today, and I'm not reviewing this right now, I have the Sim Racing Machines Fanatic Adapter, or converter if you want to call it. It's a conversion kit. It goes for €99, and what it does is it has the quick release, and it goes right onto the wheel adapter, and it turns this into a Fanatic, or not turns it, it allows you to use any Fanatic rim. So that was an immediate solution, and I do happen to have a few Fanatic wheel rims around, so it gave me my shifters and my buttons, everything I wanted to really complete the package. Cover that. Okay. Okay, now we're back on camera officially. Right there I would have showed a shot of the Fanatic wheel rim going on. That's my... Just to give you guys an idea, like as I'm doing this, and again, I have no idea what my cut points are, but what I'm constantly doing is right there in my mind as I'm talking about the Fanatic adapter allowing me to use any Fanatic wheel. Even though I was looking in the camera, I know I have a cut point going to this point. That's when I would have been showing a shot of me putting a Fanatic wheel on, showing the 918 or the butterfly, you know, the Formula rim going on. So just so you know, a little thinking, editing while driving. While filming. Okay. A lot of this part here is going to be off camera because it's the installation part. And I want to go through this fairly quickly. I was talking to Bucho about this, and I'd love your guys' thoughts. And I hope you don't mind me taking intermissions like this. I could even stop the camera for this one. Because I do want your guys' thought. Like I said, the patron team has allowed the Simpit to have an evolution that I never foresaw. I used to do a lot of detail. And really super detail. And that required being scripted. And then Barry Rollins really started doing more and more reviews. And man, that guy can out-detail me 10 to 1. So I kind of felt like, why compete with that when with what I bring to it is more human personality and touch and what the experience of putting it together was really like, rather than getting into every exact detail of what the metal is made of and the thickness and all of that. So anyway, what I am going to do is go through the 1, 2, 3 steps of getting it in. But again, the wheel, it's about a wheel review, not a wheel install. If there's huge demand, we would just do an install video separately because it would deem that kind of importance. Anyway, that's my logic and thinking. Any thoughts on that before we get back to it?
I have a thought, Sean.
Yes.
And my thought is that for me as a consumer, I'm not really interested, like you were talking about, Barry. I'm not interested in like what metric screw this is or whatever. I'm interested in, like you were saying, how do I put this on my rig and how hard is it to get it set up? Yes. That's what I'm interested in.
Yes, and when we did that, it was 2.5 hours. You know, you guys got to see like where the headaches and where the tough corners were, so to speak. So, are
you going to bring some of that footage of you doing that?
Yes, I have footage of that, and I'm going to use it. And there's another, there are 2 parts coming that I don't even have script for, because I filmed it all, and it was going through like 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%, to the point of unbearable percent of force feedback. to show the differences. I also did the same thing going through like damper and friction and inertia, because those are the main settings in the profiler. But it was easier to just film that separate and snip that into this than rather than try to remember all the stats and the points that you know what I mean? So a little of both on that. And yes, but to answer your question directly, yes, there would be shots of, as I go through the whole process here.
I just say I don't like the really long, drawn out, piece by piece reviews, but I do see that they're useful. So it's kind of with a grain of salt. I like the condensed ones, and mainly, how does it work? You know, what are the big problems of hooking it to a rig? These types of things.
Yes, I totally hear where you're coming from, and I agree with you. And it's like, for years I've been trying to find the fine line, because I often, if anything, if over the years the one comment people would make was that I was very long-winded, and my reviews were a lot longer than they needed to be, especially on certain products.
If you're going to buy it, all the more information you get is good. So.
Agreed.
Well, and I think that the first part of the information is this thing is super heavy, it could break your current rig, and it's really cumbersome to put it in. And if you're not set up for it, you probably will have wasted your money.
And it's funny you say that, because right when I go play again, that is literally exactly where we're picking up. All right.
Ask: is there a keyway on that shaft?
No.
Or to wheel?
No, I think
okay.
You can. It came with an adapter. So I'm sorry, Tim. There is a slot for a key, and then they send you a key. But their adapter does not require it. So their adapter is very round.
From spinning.
All right.
As you tighten the bolts, it actually clamps itself tighter and tighter around the actual shaft. There's no way it's going to rotate as long as you torque the bolts properly. So if you put that on the first time, you should torque it, put it on there, torque them, and use Loctite, and it won't come loose ever again.
And so the other thing, getting back to, and then I'm going to go live again, even something like that. So when I go through these notes and I read the 1, 2, 3 of putting it together, when I go to final edit version of this, if I felt the need that something was missing, I'm going to just audio dub in words. So let's just say, like right now, Bucho, you just said that about sandwiching this in. And I didn't mention it. I just said install. But if the footage really shows it sandwiching, I might slip that in just because. Just so you know. All right.
Yeah, it's also good. And now you show that it also has a keyway, so you have that option also, so it's good to know.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Here we go again. Excuse me. All right, that's recording. Audio is good. Shirt's good. Nothing's out of place. All right. Oh, I already thought of a few things I didn't say that I meant to say. I just kind of blew through the parts. I didn't mention the lengths of these USB wires. I can correct that graphically. And I did mention the length of these, but I didn't call them shielded. Sorry, I'm going by memory here on things that I know.
Because some are shielded cables and some are not.
Okay, it doesn't matter. This is all we'll see. We'll see. Sorry, you guys. This is the first one. It's going to be really rough.
What is the huge eject red button there? Is that the cut the power because it's breaking your arms?
Yes, which I did need once. If you have this on really high force feedback and you like switched games, or played a new game for the first time, so when I first played Wreckfest, its default force feedback was so strong that it was going to break my arms, but then I hit a wall or something and the wheel was just jumping and it was like, oh, I had to hit the button. So it's once everything's dialed in, you don't need it. I mean, honestly, this one's attached. On the Bodner, you don't even have to install it. You can just, you know, it's not connected to the power wires. But if you didn't want to install it here, I mean, I would just coil it up and leave it by... You have to accommodate this giant box somewhere. So,
Sean,
yes.
what you could mention is when you need it in-game, it doesn't shut down your wheel completely. If you release it, your force feedback is back again.
Yes, true. Yes, it doesn't shut down the... Yes, correct. It just shuts down the power to the wheel. That's all it does.
Right.
Yes.
I think that's something worth mentioning too.
Okay.
Because before I bought it, that was one of the questions I had.
Okay. I'm glad you said, see, and that's why I like the idea of doing this. You know, on my Bodner, I threw this away. It's not installed when I run my Bodner because I don't ever have an issue like that with that wheel. With this wheel, I did need it, and I didn't mention needing it the one time. So, in my final thoughts, I will add that to it. Okay, you guys ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. So now that you've heard everything that you actually get for your money, let's talk about what it takes to install this. And there are a few things that you need to think about before you even purchase a wheel like this. The sheer weight alone is going to be very demanding of any rig. If your rig is home built and it's not sturdy, this might collapse that wheel deck. If your rig is store-bought or one of the brands that you can purchase, it better be a very strong wheel deck. Just the size and the bulk and the weight is enough to make and test any rig to its fullest, let alone the force feedback it's going to deliver. On top of that, this is not a standard mount. This mount is actually 7.5 inches wide and between 2 and 5.5 inches front to back. Now on my Rseat, that was bigger than my wheel deck, so I actually had to use some profile tubing as an adapter. Now there are a lot of different ways that you can accomplish this, but with the profile tubing, I was able to actually mount my button box as well, so I thought it worked pretty well. Now, you have a 3-piece motor mount, or the base mount we should call it. The front plate, which holds the actual motor in place, and then the 2 side plates. The side plates are adjustable, and you actually have a pretty good amount of range and angle on the wheel in addition to whatever your rig is. So you mount the base, and then you adjust the angle. Again, it's going to take a very substantial rig to be able to do it. My Rseat held up just fine, but it did push it to its absolute maximum. My thing just turned off. I think I did that totally differently than what I had written, but I think with the footage I have, it'll all be perfectly fine. And this part I'm just going to kind of read through because I know it's all off camera. So, when installing the motor to the base, you can rotate and mount the wheel any direction you want for cable routing. Next is the output shaft to quick release mount or adapter. This uses a bolt to clamp the mechanism onto the shaft and then add any additional mounts or wheel right to that. It doesn't use a key, but you do have one available. From there in our case is that Fanatic adapter we talked about. This bolts right to the wheel mount. And adds the quick release connection and the wiring for the Fanatic wheel rims. Yeah, I'm just going to stay off camera here anyway because it's plenty of... I have more than enough B-roll for all of this, by the way. We'll also need to install fanatoleds, which will give the wheel rim function as well, but we're not covering that today.
Sean, is it pronounced fanatoleds or is it fanaleds?
I don't know, because Thomas refuses to officially acknowledge whether it's Fanatic or Fanatec. And I would assume that fanaleds or fanatoleds... that one has to be fanaleds, I would think. What did I say?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I go fanaleds, Sean. That sounds right.
Did I call it fanatoleds?
Yeah, because one of your videos...
Keep the
in one of your videos, all the comments were saying, "Oh, I have a Fanatec wheel."
Oh no, he purposely does that, or at least once he realized that nobody knew, he would play into it. That's probably more fanaleds. I don't even know how I said it. Now I'm all screwed up.
I would just say fanaleds.
Yeah, Stan, the teacher, said it's fanaleds.
What did I say?
You said fanaleds. Fanaleds.
Oh, okay.
And Billy
Well,
says
look at that. Billy
because
has an input
phonetic.
here.
Fanatic?
Yeah, he spelled it out.
Fanatic? I don't know. I think I like the mystery of them both.
I say you call it whatever you want.
Fanaleds. We will also need to install fanaleds, which will give the wheel rim function as well, but we're not covering that today. Okay. Okay, now we're back. Oh, hold on, I have to grab something. No, I don't. I can show it. Sorry, guys. We're getting there. When it comes to the driving part, that's just all freestyle because I got plenty to say about this sucker. I'll tell you that. This is just the part that's tricky because I didn't want to get it in the wrong order or talk about it wrong. Okay. Now, because of the massive amount of power that's going to be delivered, when I used my Fanatic quick release, I did use the little lockdown bolt. I'm not going to trust it just to the quick release, but that is a testament to the power of this motor, nothing else other than that. Now that we have the motor completely installed onto our rig and ready to go, it's time to get down to the wiring, and we got a bit of wiring stuff to do. Now, these connectors, these are huge, beefy connectors, and it's one of the things that I love about this wheel. It just... When you're bolting these or screwing these onto the motor, you know what kind of power you're going to get delivered. Now, these are, again, 8-foot shielded wire, so that's good. They're very heavy duty. They're very expensive, but it's going to change your wiring loom. Your wiring loom going from your computer to your wheel just got a whole lot more substantial. Connected to that, we do have the emergency stop, and as noted, this emergency stop actually cuts the power. So if you're in mid-sim and you have a problem, and I've had to, you saw me on Wreckfest have to hit this button, it just disables the power. Your wheel's still connected. It's still working. And then as soon as you release the quick release, you're back in action again with force feedback. So once we do that wiring, we also have the two 6-foot USB wires. Now we have USB on one end and mini on the other. The two mini go to the two on the case on the back, and then the two USB. One of these is for data to the wheel, and the other one is for doing firmware upgrades to the box. You want both of those plugged in simultaneously. That means 6 foot from computer to power supply, and 8 foot from power supply to steering wheel with an extra foot to go on the emergency cord. Okay. I think we are now getting down to driving.
How many hours did it take the first time you set up?
Actually, I know we're not to driving because that's exactly what I finish with. Because we haven't done software. That's where things get a little more... not even confusing. Cumbersome is the word. We did that.
Maybe it's technical, the word.
Okay. And on the hardware side of things, that is pretty much it. And that was actually pretty easy to do. I had a few mistakes where I did things out of order and had to go backward and forward. But all told, it didn't take that much effort. And it all has to go together in one direction. Now, on the software side of things, I have to say, things are a little more complex. You have two different pieces of software that you need to download, and you do have some settings that you need to do and configuration that you need to make before this is going to be up and running. It's not really plug and play, and again, it does involve some reading and some configurating, and it does take time. But it all starts with getting the SimCube configurator. Once this is installed and running, you can make adjustments to the wheel, such as set up a profile, adjust your degrees of rotation, the power, any damper, friction, or inertia changes that you want, and we'll talk about that later. Then you'll install the Granity software. You must set the configurator to Ion USB configuration, and then fire up the Granity software. And that's the point that I actually ran into my first problem. At first, it wasn't recognizing the wheel. It wasn't switching into the Granity mode, which is how it does firmware changes and makes other changes to the motor. But through enough trial and error, turning things on and off, I finally did get the wheel to acknowledge, got the Granity upgrade done, got all my settings and configurations set, and I was ready to head out and track. From the moment that I took this thing out of the box to the point that I was up and running, ready to race, took me 2.5 to 3 hours of time. Some of that was adapting my rig. Some of that was just figuring out where to put the box. But a good portion of it was also trying to figure out and get the software set up. But once I did, I was ready to go. And now it's time to get on track. Okay. I have notes here, but I'm going to completely get rid of them because I don't want to do it that way. And then I'm going to finish my whole driving experience with that part that I was telling you that's pre-done with force feedback settings and damper, friction, inertia settings. And I'm just, again, I'm showing how much it's taking at 10, 20, 30, for example, or talking about the damper and how much it's deadening the blows, talking about the friction and just the inertia. Anyway, I have that all as settings, but that's going to come after the whole driving. And the driving, I'm just going to ignore what I wrote because this is why I want to do. This is why I want to do it live. Is this section right here?
Hey, Sean. Also, people are going to see that you have the phonetic QR release and the that adapter. Let them know that that's all optional stuff that doesn't come with it. You know what I mean?
I mentioned that in when I went through parts, didn't I?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that they realize that that doesn't come in the kit.
Okay, I think towards the end, thank you, Bucho, just because I'm glad if there's any doubt, I want to be clear. At the end, what I'm going to do is mention that I'm going to review this separately. And I'll just get all the footage I need before I send it back to you. Because this is a product worth mentioning because it would have worked on my Bodner. It would work on a Sim Experience, your way version. It would work on any OSW, essentially, with the standard wheel mount. So this is a great option for those, especially those who already have Fanatic gear. So yeah, I'll mention that again at the end, and then we'll do a separate review on that, as if I'm not backed up enough. What's Heiko show? Okay, I'm not looking at that. All right, I'm gonna take a swig of my coffee real quick, you guys. Where'd I put it? All right, bear with me 1 second, you guys. Sorry.
Take a breather, man, if you need to.
No. We got to get this done. I'm just grabbing my coffee.
Sean's putting so much pressure on himself.
You know, Bucho, he could, mind, and to me, it would be great.
Yeah.
I just think it's cool we get to hang out and actually, you know, go through this whole process of making a review.
Exactly. I mean, no one else does this kind of stuff.
Is
I mean,
it?
it always
See,
looks.
I'm so glad you guys say that, because I'm like, I don't know. You know, it's like, is it or is it boring? Is it boring AF?
It looks so professional when they come out, and you just think, God, this guy knows everything. He must sim race perfectly. And then you realize behind the scenes that no, it's hard to do.
Sean, it's like Saturday Night Live. They do that stuff live, and they have mistakes, and they do stuff, and sometimes it actually makes the show better. You know,
right.
rather than having something so scripted, you know?
And there are laughs that happen off camera that only the people who did it live know about, you know? When we were putting this together, the thing could have gone up in smoke, you know? All right. Camera. Test. Okay, here we go. All right, now let's get down to driving, which is the real thing that everybody wants to know about. Before I even get to it, I've said it a few times, and I have to come back. When you fire your first sim up, I would turn your force feedback down, or you're going to be hitting that emergency stop. This motor, again, is the strongest motor that I have ever put my hands on it, and if you didn't figure that out, if you bought one of these and you haven't figured out by the time you've lifted it, mounted it to your rig, put these monster cables on it, if you didn't get an idea of the kind of power that you're going to be dealing with, then I don't know what's going to give you that kind of idea. Maybe that yellow motor we showed on the show earlier today. But I might turn my force feedback down very low and work my way up is my first suggestion with this wheel, because it is super strong. Now, I've said all that like that's a bad thing. I've said all that like it's a warning, like, ooh, be aware, this thing will tear your arms off. And sure, it probably could. Again, it's made for conveyor belts and printing presses. But you want that power. There are reasons for that power, and we're going to talk about that a lot more through this portion of the show. How does it drive? So, my mistake was I didn't turn it down. And one of the first things I found out is this wheel will hurt you. You will need to turn it down and get it to the point that you want it to be just right. Now, when you get it dialed in, when you get this to that sensation, and it will take time, you're going to need to make some adjustments. When you're dealing with a lightweight wheel, let's just call them the over-the-shelf, off-the-shelf wheels, Logitech, Thrustmaster, and Fanatic. Those wheels are great force feedback, but they lack the power that really is going to hit you upside of your head. Now, the difference is that extra power can give you the realism of a real car, and that's what we're going for with the direct drive wheel. There are other advantages as well. There's very little cogging, very little extra feeling in that wheel. This wheel is even smoother than my Bodner wheel in that respect. It is also extremely rigid. All those other wheels that we've talked about, somewhere within them there's some flex. Something in it just reminds you that it's just an off-the-counter, over-the-shelf, whatever you want to call it, wheel. Versus this being so industrial strength, has so much rigidity that it feels, again, like you've gotten in a real race car and you're holding on to a real steering wheel. Now again, getting it dialed in is critical. Those lightweight wheels at their forces, it doesn't really matter. 50%, 70%, whatever your force feedback of choice is, it doesn't matter until you get to the point of clipping, to the point it's exceeding the force feedback ability of those wheels. With this wheel, you have that so much power that it becomes critical to get it dialed in to the point that you want it to be. Now, if you're a real racer and you're training for your race on Sunday, you're going to want to duplicate that strength that you want or expect or get out of your go-kart or your open-wheeler or whatever car you do drive. As a sim racer, we might want that realism, but what we're really looking for is the amount of force feedback that gets us the best effects to get us the best laps. That's the bottom line. The best lap times is what we're going for. So, after taking days, it wasn't hours, it was days to get it to where I had all of my settings just right. But when I did, this wheel did something phenomenal. It gives you the ability to get so much power. When that wheel loads up and you're turning in, you're feeling every bump in the road. You're feeling every bit of release and catching of the tires. So as the tires are working their way through the corner, the force feedback is just delivering. And again, the difference between lightweight and heavy force feedback is just how much you feel those finest moments. Sure, those moments are being delivered in every steering wheel you're going to get, but you multiply it by 10 and there's no ignoring those effects. So the wheel was smooth, it was accurate, and it was constantly giving me feedback. And again, getting it dialed in is really critical. You get it to the point where it's jumping the wheel out of your hands, and that's not an advantage. Now, no matter how much I turned this up, I never got to the point of clipping in any of the games I tested. It essentially delivered more power than I could handle. I don't think of myself as a superhero strong guy, but I'm not a lightweight either. So the wheel delivered enough power for me to even get the sensations that I'm accustomed to in the cars that I've driven in real life. That being like an open-wheeled 2-liter car, open-wheeled rotary Mazda, or a go-kart. It definitely gave me that kind of power to the point where you are sweating if that's what you're looking for. Now again, looking for lap times, it's about dialing it down. Getting it to that point where it's delivering me every effect that I want, but not to the point of distraction or the point of slowing me down whatsoever. Other effects, little things. When you start hitting the brakes and you get that lockup, you feel it that much quicker, you feel it that much stronger, and you're that much faster to react to the moment based on what the wheel is doing to you. And the one thing I've learned from using direct drive over the years is that I do want a little more force feedback than the lower wheels can actually deliver. So, 30 Newton meters is where we're at on this. Comparing this to maybe 20 Newton meters, 15 Newton meters, how much is too much? Now, I don't know if you can ever have too much, because you're always turning it down, and you always have that much to draw upon. I don't necessarily think you need 30, but again, some people, I know drivers who drive with a lot stronger force feedback than I do, and there might be a scenario where they're actually going to want the power. The other thing that I consider, especially on the OSW version, maybe more than on a Bodner wheel, the price difference between the lower and the extra power is nominal. You're talking $1,500 US for this wheel. That's half the price of a Bodner. The difference between this and the lower, you've already made that step up. You might as well get the extra horsepower and always have it there to draw from. All right, let me take one moment here. How are we doing so far? I have more to say.
I like it, John. Very, very good so far.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay. Now, I mentioned the amount of accuracy this wheel has. Accuracy, to me, equals consistency. When you get used to this wheel, and you use a wheel, and I don't want to specifically say this wheel, I think at the point that you get to a direct drive wheel, you're usually getting encoders that are at such a high rate, and even some of the lower wheels have encoders at really amazing rates. But when you remove all the flex, you get it that rigid, that one-to-one, and that force feedback that is always there. The consistency that this wheel delivers actually will make you a better sim racer. 10 years ago, I would have said not a chance, it doesn't matter. 5 years ago, I would have said not a chance, it doesn't matter. But we're getting to that point where even the Martin Cronkies of the world have stepped up to a direct drive wheel, and it's a combination of two things: sourcing the right motors and getting the right software that can make it run the way we want, because we're not conveyor belts, we're not printing presses, we are sim racer looking for real life experience out of our steering wheel. So again, what I found with this wheel was that I was amazingly consistent when comparing it to an average wheel. Do you need it to win a championship? No. And in fact, if I was an e-sport challenger, if I was a guy who was really determined to go win one of these e-sport competitions, I would probably stay away from this steering wheel. I'm not going to say that you wouldn't enjoy it. I'm not going to say that it's not great. What I'm going to say is it's going to take you away from the norm when it comes to those e-sport competitions, because let's face it, when you get there, it's going to be a Logitech, a Thrustmaster, or a Fanatec wheel, not an OSW or any of the other direct drive wheels out there. So the consistency is very important to me. The ability to hit my marks, and when I do make the slightest of mistake, getting that exact feedback of how much. When you're turning in and you hit a bump and it gives you that kickback, it's just telling you that much more of how much you need to lighten up the wheel, because the force feedback is right there and it's so strong even on a lower amount. Why is it strong on a lower amount? Because it has endless amounts of power to draw from. You're never out of power, and that's one of the critical things of having such a heavy duty wheel. Excuse me. Lost my train of thought, and there's one other thing that I wanted to say. Give me 1 second. Shit.
One of the problems that I find is that with lots of force, the subtlety oftentimes get drowned out because there's just power. How would you say that that works?
Let me just address that live anyway. Hold on, I'm still trying to think. I'm going to come back to that.
In one sentence, that's what the power reserves are for.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why I have so much power and turn it down. You never run out of power, no matter what happens, if you get lots of downforce in Rouge or somewhere else.
Okay. Now, I have a few times also said that that power could come to the point of distraction. And I actually think there is a fine line for most sim racers versus real-life racers who sim race for training versus sim racers who are looking for pure outright speed. When looking for pure outright speed, I have to confess, I turn this all the way down to maybe 15% and say Assetto Corsa. And that's going to get me my best lap times versus I might be able to run it at 25-30%, but it's actually going to slow me down. But the great thing about it is whether you're running it at 15 or at 30%, it doesn't matter. You have endless reserves to call upon. So if you have a moment, whether it's a wall hit, a wreck, or a bump, we were at racing last night when there are huge curves and I was feeling them kick the wheel and those giant spikes, there's always enough. But at the same time, because it was so fast, because it was so responsive, it was still giving me everything down to the finest details, like road noise and the small vibrations or the small slipping of wheel angle because I was losing traction. The other thing that I have to say about this wheel, even when you turn the force feedback lower, you're still tending to run at a higher level than those lower wheels, because when I run in iRacing on a Thrustmaster, Logitech, or Fanatic, for the most part, I am hitting the clipping point at some point in my driving day. I run enough force feedback that I'm actually hitting that clipping point where I'm maxed out on how much the wheel can deliver. That doesn't happen with this wheel. Because of that, because the ability to turn it up, I actually would say that the power of this wheel actually takes you to a whole nother level of immersion. Now, it might slow you down when you get to the point where that wheel is moving you around as much as you're moving it around, but it is drawing you further and further into the wheel. Now, after endless amounts of testing, I've run 1 hour races, I've done 4 hour practice sessions, I've done Wreckfest, which will just tear a wheel up with the amount of crashing, banging, and vibration from the dirt and from the hits from the drivers and car damage. No matter what, the wheel was cool to the touch, never smelled anything from the wheel whatsoever. It was a pleasure, lap after lap, every single lap, it worked. Now, the only downside in all my driving, I better get rid of that part right there anyway.
Perfect so far.
What was that, Heiko?
Perfect so far.
Okay.
Yeah, Max had an opinion to give.
Actually, I can scroll this down. This is about when I'm going to go to the settings part. Can I hear that? No. Can you guys hear the gardeners?
Nope.
No, I don't hear them.
Okay.
I don't hear him.
Okay.
I heard Max, but that's okay. Everybody knows he's there, and he's
Okay.
a good character.
Yeah, Max can bark in the show at this point. I don't care. All right, now I'm just going to lead to the other clips on talking about power. Those were pretty much my thoughts on driving. Anybody have any questions? Because the next part that I'm going to move on to is the part that I have already done with different audio, with the force feedback and the damper, inertia, and friction. And the next thing is moving into pros and cons and final thoughts, at which point I'm going to... Oh, you did hear the leaf blower. Shit. Oh, Stan heard it too. Shit. So any questions so far about driving experience?
Well, I got one, Sean. Are you going to be able to talk about how this wheel compares to any other wheels, or do you want to leave that out?
I mean, I've made minor comparisons, and in the final thoughts, I make a little bit more of a direct comparison to the Bodner, which is really my only other fair reference.
Well, with all the wheels that you've ever tried, has any other wheel that you can think of performed better than this OSW?
No. I think I cover that a little bit in my final thoughts.
Okay. So it's safe to say then that the OSW could be the last wheel you'd ever need to buy.
Yes. That I can safely say, for sure. So yeah. But I think I cover that in my final thoughts because I hopefully do. I think I do. Let's see. I'm gonna start a new
Something
clip.
interesting for you to mention is the fact that you're going to get some console people and some people who are new to PC simming. Because it's an interesting wheel, it's something that everybody's talking about. They're bound to see it, and I think it's interesting to give a point of view of would I ever be able to run this on my PlayStation kind of thing.
I think I mentioned that in my cons, but I'm going to add that to the final thoughts as well. I'm going to double check that it is on my cons, and I'm going to get another swig of coffee, and then we'll get this going here. Oh, I can't see this very well.
The other question I had is how well supported this is by all software. Would you be able to run it in any sim?
I mentioned that in my pros and cons too. You can run it on any sim that acknowledges, any proper PC sim that acknowledges multiple hardware. So using like a RecFest as our benchmark. But certain games, like the gamier the game, the less likely it's going to work because as a bare minimum, there is no option for one controller because it is no pedals, it is no wheel. Yeah, I mean, I consider it did work in RecFest. It did work in Codemasters. But I assume it won't work in... I'm trying to think of a single controller game right now.
Oh, by the way, Sean,
Yes.
if you can connect pedals and buttons to the SimiCube.
Okay.
Damn it, how was it called? The plug. It's the same as the internet plug in your PC.
Say that again?
Like an Ethernet cable?
Yeah, it's an Ethernet cable plug.
For which pedals?
It's the DIY stuff. It just has the... Damn it, word is missing again.
I definitely didn't know that.
It just has two sockets. One is for potentiometers, and the other socket is for buttons. Wait, I'll search something on the website.
Okay. No, that's okay, Heiko, because you know what? It sounds like that's some next level stuff. It's not like
it's DIY.
So that's for, and that's one of my points in the end about this wheel, comparing it to like a Leo. Yeah, you have more options and profiles and things, but at the same time, it's also all really kind of a little less refined. If that makes sense. Okay. Anything else, you guys?
No.
But just if someone is interested.
I will mention it. I'll try to remember to mention it. The beauty is also, if I don't mention it and I can remember it, I will...
Oh no, I just posted a link if someone is interested.
Okay. Gotcha. But again, that would be a total DIY set of pedals, or I'm going to have to totally unwire my Fanatic to make that work. Okay.
Say it again, please.
But that works, but it's essentially for a DIY set of pedals, or you have to unwire any set that you've bought.
Yeah, you have to unwire, rewire to Ethernet cable plug.
Okay. So yeah.
Yeah, I think just sticking with the fact that this is basically built for PC. There are other stuff you can do on your own, but that's not what this exactly was made for.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's made for PC and for a pro and a PC, not just for the average consumer who just wants to plug and play.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
That I mentioned in my final thoughts for sure. Okay.
It's like buying a supercharger kit and getting it on your car and getting it dialed in and getting it working.
My only problem is I'm hearing... Hold on. I'm hearing that.
Yeah, I'm hearing something now.
I can see it on my... I have to remember Friday is not a good day to do this.
Damn landscapers.
Oh, we're so close to done, too. Come on. Is he going away? Is he staying? I hear his motor humming, but not blowing. Thanks for that, Heiko.
You're welcome.
They're chainsawing trees. Billy, you have a great ear. They're doing that across the street as well. Wow. They don't know. They don't know. I'm going to have to go out and yell at them. All right, they're being quiet. I'm going to go again. So just to give you an idea of exactly how strong this motor is, I did some clips of me testing various different levels of force feedback until it got to the point that I just couldn't take anymore. Alright, now I'm going to show those, and that actually gets kind of funny. And let's see. Alright, now we're going to move in pros, cons, final thoughts, and then questions for you from you guys. So again, after all of my extensive amount of driving, I gotta tell you, this wheel delivered in a good way in every single scenario. I never had a moment of driving where it wasn't doing something predictable or had some ill effect other than me having the force feedback just outright too strong to the point that I had to hit that emergency stop. But for the most part, that wasn't the case. It did work perfectly, lap after lap, sim after sim. But I will say, this is a high-end wheel. It's a strong wheel. It's not intended for beginners. It's not intended for children. I would not let my kids near this wheel unless I had made absolutely certain that the wheel was turned down to the lowest force feedback possible. I'd make sure this was very much at the ready because it is an industrial strength motor. On top of that, this is not really intended for the amateur driver. It is a PC. It is a hardcore wheel. It's not going to work on your Xbox. It's not going to work on your PlayStation. Now, even though it is a wheelbase all in its own, it doesn't come with the wheel, you do have abilities. You can get a variety of different wheels to add to it. You can actually work with this and plug in your own DIY pedal set. It's got abilities and expansion, and that's one of the beauties of the OSW, the open source wheel. It is endless what you can do and what you will be able to do in the future with this wheel. It does make it fairly unique when comparing it to just about any other wheel out on the market, and I will say there are a lot of different OSWs to choose from. Now, if it hasn't been clear, my opinion, my overall thoughts about this wheel, let's go ahead and break it down with the good, the not so good, and then finish with the bottom line. Now, starting with the good, I think it's absolutely beautiful. Sure, it's industrial. Sure, it's big and beefy and black. But there's something about those heavy-duty cables. There's something about a motor of that size being used for me to sim race that just makes it sexy, makes it cool, makes it super high-tech, and something I love to look at on my rig. It is very smooth. There is like zero friction, zero lash, zero cogging. The wheel motor is perfectly silent. No noise at all. Not at all. Other than what it makes rattle. Your wheel rim, your rig, your house even. It's extremely accurate and it's extremely fast reading. No flex, perfectly rigid. Incredible delivery of force feedback with no loss, no clipping. Bottom line is, it makes every PC sim feel better. Immersion. A wheel of this power and this realism draws you further into the sim. Multiple profiles can be created. Oh, my thing turned off. I am recording, yep, audio, okay. Multiple
Big and beefy and still smaller than most wheelbases.
Say again?
One motor, big and beefy, but still smaller than most wheelbases.
Yes, yes, ultimately it is. I mean, yes, indeed. It is big, though. Multiple profiles can be created. One for each sim, one for each scenario. Adjustable degrees of rotation. Actually, scratch that. I mentioned that. That's not a pro. Every wheel on the market does it. Easy to mount. Just 4 holes and it's bolted. Your rig just needs to be big and strong enough for it. That was my first one out of order. Okay. Bulletproof. Built to last. It's going to last just about forever. Motor mount is strong and has a good amount of angle adjustment. Built for professional simulators. State of the art. Confidence building. Adds to my ability to judge the car. Capable of real life forces. I think that's all of those. Yep. Alright.
would you say that given all this raving that you just did, it's value for money?
Yes, yes, it is. But
And that's a pro as well.
It's
a lot of money, but it's a lot of value.
Yeah, it is. But with that, I mean, this is an area that I have a very hard time as a reviewer. So I kind of summarized it instead of pros and cons into the final thoughts on that topic, because here's the. I was talking to Bucho today. If I buy a Honda Civic, it will last forever. It'll do 250,000 miles. All I have to do is oil change and basic maintenance. If I put a coffee can exhaust pipe filter on it, you know, a cold intake, a turbo, change the computer, I'm going to have a car that's going to start becoming high performance but temperamental. And so the bang for buck is sort of like that. It's like, well, you get the performance side of it, and that is worth the money for some, but it comes with a whole set of aggravation that for others I would not recommend. So it's like, it's really hard for me to say. I mean, bang for the buck, yes, because it's... I just don't have the whole lot of faith in it. I don't want to say this.
Then I think that your conflict between saying, well, it's great value, but there's other elements to it, I think that this conflict is something interesting to share.
And that's why I put it in the final thoughts instead of the pros and cons. It's like, well, I could say it's expensive, but it's not really, because it's cheap compared to the wheels in its price range.
I mean, it was the last of the selling points for me. But that motor will outlive everyone's grandchildren. Maybe in 50 years you have to change the bearings.
And that's where the real bang for the buck comes from, is that it's the last wheel you're going to have to buy. If you bought a Fanatic 1.0, well, when the 2.0 you had to have it. When the 2.5 came out, it had to have it. And now when the Podium comes out, if you have a 2.5, you're going to feel like you have to have it.
A few years ago, we changed such a motor on a milling machine that was 30 years old and ran for around 10 to 12 hours per day.
That's what me and Sean were saying this morning.
Well, and then also bang for the buck. Well, it's expensive when compared to a Fanatic, and it's cheap when compared to a Bodner. Newton meter to Newton meter, it's cheap compared to an AccuForce. Shit, Newton meter to Newton meter, it's even cheap compared to a Feel VR, and we don't even know if that's going to deliver. Let's play with that in the final thoughts.
And how long it will deliver.
Yeah, I don't know. And honestly, I don't know how long the Fanatic Podium will last. I don't know how long the sim experience will last. I know that I've beat my Bodner up for a really long time, and it's a motor, a Kohler motor. Well, this is a midge. It's made to be beat up on. All right. Ready? Anything else? This is way cooler for me. It's like I have directors and editors who are like, no, you got that wrong.
You have a live audience, don't have editors.
I mean, you can only compare it to the Bodner because the AccuForce is like half the torque, and I'm pretty confident that even when the new Fanatic Podium comes out, it's probably going to be more of a AccuForce competitor than it's going to be with the big OSW or the Bodner. So we won't know until it comes out, but just by looking at it, that you can pretty much tell us what's going to be.
Yeah.
But I bet the AccuForce is a wheel that sees clipping sometime.
Chris said it did. I mean, Chris had one before, and he sold it and just got an OSW, and he said it's a night and day difference.
Yeah. Well, I could see that just by the difference in power, because I've seen how close we can get, even though I don't get there. It's like, well, if it was half as much motor, it would.
Sean,
All
right. You guys ready?
Sure, go back.
Okay. And now on to the not so good. Starting off with the software that we had to get through in the beginning. It was clunky. it was difficult, and it required far more reading and information than I actually wanted to tolerate. And it's one of the downsides of the OSW concept. But with it, you get a lot of that open sim wheel stuff that makes it good. So it sort of creates its own market for consumer based on some of those factors right there when comparing it to some of the other direct drive wheels out on the market where you're going to get software, you download it, you run the settings, and you're up and racing. End of story. So it is a little more complicated, but you have a little more variety of things as well. Another one of the things on the not so good, unfortunately, my Windows system only saw this wheel about 50% of the times that I fired up Windows. It meant that I was constantly going, and it made me create something that I should have, and I've told you guys to do for yourselves. It created a pre-flight checklist for me. I don't enter a race room without making sure I fired up the software, that the wheel is recognized, and it's centered and ready to go. It's something I haven't had to do in the past, and one of the downsides of the wheel. With that also comes that it would lose center. So sometimes if I had to refine the wheel, it would come back and I'd have to recenter the wheel. It's not a big deal. It just comes back to having a pre-flight checklist, but you should have that anyway just to make sure you load your setups, have your drink, whatever you need to do to be ready to race. I mentioned this during the install, but I have to put it as a con for the average sim racer. You are going to need a bigger, stronger sim rig. So a lot of the commercial rigs are strong enough to handle it. A lot of the DIY rigs, if it's 80-20, are going to be strong enough to handle it. But if your rig feels flimsy, you're going to need a rig before you get this wheel. And with that, you might also need to modify your rig. It isn't a standard configuration. I'm mentioning it now. It's not a big con because I think if you're in the market for this wheel, if you have a rig strong enough, making a change to your rig to adapt to this wheel isn't going to be a deal breaker for anybody who's actually in the market for the wheel. Alright, some of these cons are kind of ticky-tack. I'm actually going to say that. Now, a few of the things on my not-so-good list are actually kind of ticky-tack, but I mention them because they are going to be a factor for certain users, such as, this is a very large power supply. Usually, when you get a wheel, it comes with a little brick, if any kind of power supply at all. This is a big box. You're going to have to hide it somewhere, and if you have one of those perfect sim racing environments, it's a lot of hardware to hide. Along with, I mentioned, the now very, very heavy-duty cables. So it is industrial, and you do have some extra parts that you have to deal with just to get it built into your rig and looking good. Hold on.
Repeat that part about the cable, because as you was doing it, you was moving stuff and it completely overrode your voice.
When I did that? Thanks, Tim. Okay. In addition to the power supply, you also have the very heavy-duty cables that you're going to have to deal with. So it is going to change your sim racing rig, and you are going to have some extra hardware to deal with and make look pretty. Now the next con, I'm going to mention it because we have to compare it to where we are in the world of sim racing today. And that is that it is expensive. At $1,500, there's no denying this is an expensive wheelbase. And at $1,500, you're only getting a wheelbase. You still don't have a wheel solution. You still don't have pedals, shifters, button boxes, or any of those other things. So it is a lot of money. But to call it a not so good isn't even that fair either. I'm going to talk... Now I have to do that whole part again because I don't have a cut point there. And I hear the gardeners again. Oh, this is killing me. Killing me.
Speak louder and lower the gain.
Well, if you're going to do it on Friday next time, Sean, just do it like later on in the afternoon or evening.
No, I'm not going to do them on Fridays anymore. Friday's going to not be
Yeah,
filmed.
just a bad day. Yep.
Yep.
It's like me, they're doing that shit all the time, Thursday, Friday.
Yep. I can pick 6 other days of the week and not have this going on. I just haven't lived here long enough to know that yet. But as soon as I heard the noise, it's like, oh yeah, Friday's gardener days. F you, gardeners. F you to hell. Thank you, Tom. I needed a... Okay, they stopped. Okay. It was that whole expensive one. I have to do the whole thing again. And the next item on the not so good list, I have to mention, and that's basically because where we are in the sim racing world today. It is $1,500, and that is expensive. When you consider you get a wheel base, it doesn't have a wheel rim solution, doesn't come with pedals, doesn't come with a shifter, button box, or anything else. It is just a wheel base. And at $1,500, that is a lot higher than a lot of other wheels on the market that you can get, certainly not direct drive. Now, to be fair, it really comes down to bang for buck, and we're going to cover that a little more in the final thoughts, but I do feel that it's something I have to mention here. The next two cons the next two not so good things about this wheel are things that we've already talked about already. The fact that it is PC only, this isn't a gamer's wheel, this is a sim racer's wheel, and that it's not going to work on some simple games. If you have a game like Grand Theft Auto or something that you like to play, maybe even The Crew, if it's a game that only works with one controller, you can count this wheel out, even if it's on the PC. This is not for amateurs, this is for professionals. And actually, that was my last real con. I mentioned that it was difficult. I mentioned that, yep. The only other one is that it's large, but I think I've covered that to the point that I'm blue in the face, and it's not...
Sean, it isn't large. Compared to other wheels, then it isn't large. The motor itself is large.
For me, it's still, by the time I add the cables and everything...
Yeah.
It does take up as much room as any other wheel. Because my mount, it's a little high. I couldn't get it under my rig as close as I'd like. But I've had that problem with the T500 as well. So, no, I think I've said it's large enough anyway. I don't need it again. Alright, now we're on to the final thoughts. And then I'm going to turn to you guys for questions and hit me with whatever.
Hey, Sean, I got a question real quick.
Yes.
Does it connect with 1 or 2 USBs to the PC?
2. I covered that in setup for sure.
But could that be a con?
Wait. No. Depends on.
Well, I have them both.
Normally you need just one. One for playing, and you can unplug it and plug it in the other socket.
Right.
If you're setting firmware.
For granted.
2 is, let's say, sounds stupid, but for lazy guys.
That's what I did. And you know what? I have so many wires and things that it was like, well, they're redundant, so I can run them together. I have that loom going from there to there already, so it's okay. But no, I wouldn't call it a con. I mean, I think I covered the fact that the wires are big and a lot, and it's substantial compared to,
right,
3 little tiny wires on a Thrustmaster. Okay. And now on to the bottom line. This is a serious wheel, so I'm going to get a little serious with you guys on this topic right now. Who is this wheel really intended for? If you're watching this video and you think $300, $500, $600, $700 is a lot for a steering wheel, I agree with you. And there are plenty of champions who win race after race on a standard wheel set that could easily be gotten for under $600. Again, so who is this wheel marketed to? It's to the professional. It's the guy who really races in real life and is trying to get that same feeling at home, which can't be done on an under $600 wheel. Who's it for? It's for the professional sim racer, for the guy who's tired of replacing inadequate plastic gear that after maybe 2-3 years, which is a good run for $300, $400, $500 or $600, but who is sick of having to replace wheels. This is the last steering wheel that you're ever going to need. If you bought a first-gen wheel, if you're sitting on a Logitech G25, I know you want to throw it away if you haven't already and step up to a G29 if you missed the G27 phenom. In this case, you're not going to be waiting for the next upgrade. You're not going to be looking for a new steering wheel. Who's this wheel for? It's for the professional. When you go down to the dealership and you buy a Honda, that car is going to last you forever. You change the oil, you do a little bit of maintenance, it'll run trouble-free for its entire life. However, you take that same car and you juice it up with some horsepower. You put in a new computer chip, a cold intake, a turbocharger, and an exhaust pipe. Well, you got a lot more performance, but you also stepped up into a professional car, a car that's going to require constant maintenance. It's going to be finicky. It's going to take brain power and expertise to get the most out of it. You don't just bolt those parts on and have them work perfectly. It takes knowledge, wisdom, trial and error, and in the world of direct drive wheels, you're getting a little of all that as well. You've stepped up into that tuner world. You're going to have a wheel that might not be recognized every time, and that you might need a checklist to go through your procedures to make sure everything's operating perfectly. But you know what? In real life racing, that's what they do. They don't just turn on the car and head it on the track. They got a procedure that they go through to make sure they don't miss a single step. Who's this wheel for? This wheel's for a professional. When you buy a race car, if you're a race car mechanic, you know the term nut and bolt. Nut and bolt. Every time a race car comes off the track, the mechanics go to work, nut and bolt. They check every nut, they check every bolt, because a race car is going to rattle itself loose. Now, there's nothing in this motor that is going to rattle loose whatsoever, but everything else sure will. My Fanatic wheels, they both rattled loose. I had to get my tools out, find out which nuts and bolts had come loose and tighten them all up. My rig was even loosening up. This thing creates some massive force, some massive vibration, and you're going to have to treat it like a professional. You're going to need to double, triple check things. You're going to have to go through your checklists. Who's this wheel made for? The professional. The guy who is willing to pay whatever it takes to get exactly what he wants out of a steering wheel. But it does come at a cost. Now, the last thing I'm going to finish with is the whole concept of bang for buck. Is it really worth it? It's $1,500. How can I sit here at my desk and tell you to take $1,500 and spend it on a sim racing wheel? Well, if you want the most out of your sim racing hobby, it does come at a price. If you just don't want to have to ever buy another wheel, talk about consistency, never have to buy another wheel, that is the ultimate in consistency. Bang for buck? It is expensive. It's double, triple the price of those wheels. But again, you're not going to replace it. Bang for the buck? Well, you can compare it to a Bodner wheel. Those are $3,000. This comes in at $1,500. That's half the price. Is a little software, a little setup, too much to ask for when the wheel is half the price and even more power than the Bodner? Something you have to kind of think about. I'm not sure I could advise it to everybody. I have friends who are not computer techs. I have friends who just getting a sim installed or their wheel, a basic wheel, set up and running is a challenge. For those people, I don't care how much they consider themselves a professional. Please stay away. This is confusing. Please don't spend your hard-earned money on something so outrageous that's going to only cause you headaches. But if you're willing to take the time, if you're willing to really learn what it takes to get it dialed in, go through all the software, get it all installed, well, bang for the buck, you're going to get the same results as you're going to get out of a Bodner at half the money. But it does take that extra knowledge, that extra wisdom, and that takes time. So that is going to do it for my final thoughts. And before I end this show, this stream, this live version of the show that we've done was for our patron group only. These guys have been able to help me finish this review. And now I'm going to turn to them to make sure that there's no stone that I didn't turn over and make sure I gave you the details. We're going to find out if there are any questions from those guys. So guys, any thoughts, questions, anything you think I might have missed or should have covered on this wheel?
Did you ever try this wheel with Trucking Sim ATS or ETS2?
No, I didn't. But you know what? It would be a really great wheel for doing that. Now, it does come back to what I was talking about on basic games. Well, I think most of the truck sims acknowledge that the hardcore guys want a lot of controllers and are going to want to use it. So I suspect that it would and should work. And I also suspect it would be awesome because, again, getting back to that ability to build a profile that gives me, I mean, obviously a big semi-truck has massive power steering, I'm guessing, but it also has massive wheel rotation. You're going to be able to get that kind of feel, but, you know, it'll take dialing it in.
I wish you would have had. I wish I would have said something earlier. You would have had a chance to give an ATS just a quick spin, even because I think it would be absolutely phenomenal. And there are a lot of truckers.
Tim, there's no reason it wouldn't because it accepted my Bodmer wheel. So it means that the ATS in particular accepted multiple controllers, which was the step one, and then took non-recognized controllers. It didn't have to be a Logitech Thrustmaster or Fanatic for it to even see it. So there's no reason it would not work. I can almost guarantee it.
Be just phenomenal.
Nice
okay, thanks.
As nice as it is, no, it will not get you a date. In fact, it might break a date if you showed it or bragged about it before the date. Any other questions, you guys? Anything I didn't cover? We've talked about some things that we wanted to cover. Did I hit them?
I have a funky question.
I
was listening to you talking about who was this for and etc. And it almost made me think, how much would the investment be for you to run a weekend at Lemons? Let's say you get the car and do that versus that wheel. Obviously, the wheel is going to last you so much more. You're going to use it so much more often.
No.
But if you want the real deal, why not go for a Lemons race?
You know, that's a great question. And I'll tell you why. Lemons is really not nearly as inexpensive as it seems. So if you've never run a Lemons at all, a helmet is not inexpensive and they don't give them away free at the race. A driving suit that needs to be fireproof. They're very serious about safety in Lemons. So your driver gear is going to cost you anywhere from $500 to mine cost me $2,000. Actually, it was more than that. It was closer to $3,000. That's just to be geared up. The entrance fees on Lemons are like $1 to $250 a driver, depending on what series, because there's a bunch of different Lemons variations. So you have that cost. Well, when I want to go to do a Lemons race, and why I don't do more of them, is I have my transportation, my lodging, my food on the thing, and then here's the big one. If you're a driver in the car, well, you have to pay for your portion of the fuel and tires. So we went through so much fuel in the 24-hour race that I couldn't even afford my fuel bill for the event. So I think one weekend of Lemons for the average Lemons guy is going to set you back the same amount as this almost. And that's just for one time. Now, the super frugal, the guy who already has a helmet, the guy who's willing to, you know, his friends are like, oh, we got the gas. You know, you can Lemons race for $400 a weekend if you're going to sleep in a tent and, you know, hitch a ride. So, is that a funky enough answer?
Wonderful.
Any other questions, you guys?
In the review, you were mentioning about weaker sim rigs. You know, you can't use them. Would you have any specific sim rigs in mind that you would not put this wheelbase on?
I would put it on a Butto. I would put it on the next level. I would put it on an Rseat. I would put it on the big play seat. I would not put it on any of the weak play seats. I would not put it on a game pod. I would not put it on a flimsy Deathmobile. Because I've built a few Deathmobiles, and I built a couple Deathmobiles that were Logitech ready, and I've built a few Deathmobiles that were OSW ready. you know, if you race with your rig now and you see wheel movement out of it, then it's probably not strong enough. Now, I also believe that any rig can be modified. If you give me the weakest rig in the world, and that's the rig I have to work with, I will reinforce it somehow, some way. So it could be done. Stan's home-built PVC rig is a definite no-go. See, even those, I've seen variations of the PVC rig and different gauges of PVC that you'd have to know your rig well enough. But if you have a PVC rig, you know your rig. Anything else? All right. Awesome. Awesome.
Sure, Sean.
What's that?
Very good.
Yeah.
You know, Bryce, it could even... oh, there's a PVC rig. I would put this... I have the next level wheel stand. I would put this... It'll hold the wheel. Oh, it might topple forward. It's going to topple forward. Sorry.
We were joking around, and Michelle asked, "What will happen if you put an OSW on a wheel stand?" And I said, "Crash, and the wheel stand will start rotating in front of you."
Well, here's my other way of thinking on the whole wheel stand, wheel rig, what rig. If you're spending $1,500 here, it's $100 for the Fanatic adapter, $200 for an inexpensive, $400 for an expensive Fanatic rim. So 15, 16, let's just go cheap end, the black butterfly open wheeler, non-carbon, so we'll call it 200. So we're at 1,800. An inexpensive pedal set, and I'm saying inexpensive, like would you really be looking for that route when going with this size of wheel and type of wheel? So now I'm at $2,100 for my wheel and pedal set. That's not the moment that I would be cheap on my rig. So if I have that much, is a new Obutto at 800? How much is an Obutto right now? $800?
Yeah,
Is
like
new,
800 for the Revolution.
Yeah, is a new Rseat at 800 or 1,200 for the new R1, S1, R1, RS? Yeah, S1. No, R1. No, I can't remember. Is paying too much for a new rig at that point too much? I don't really think so, because you're already at 2,100, and that gets back to that whole, who is this wheel for? It's for the professional. You know, it's for the guy who's willing to build an 80/20 rig because that's the way to go. It's the guy who's willing to buy a high-end rig, brand new, just to hold the wheel. It's not for the kid. It's not for the budget sim racer whatsoever. You know, you don't have to have this wheel. You can win $1 million in esport on a Logitech. So, any other questions?
So, Sean, bottom line, I mean, I know you don't want to talk negative about Bodden or anything, but so if you don't want to spend $4,000, this is the best direct drive you can get without spending like $4,000.
Yeah. So, and I'll edit this portion right back into the show. And I did touch upon it on the bang for the buck part of it, but this wheel performs with the Bodner hand in hand. I had no moments that I was like, oh, but my Bodner does that better. That never happened, and I don't really have any moments where I was like, oh, well, that's better than my Bodner, except for it was actually a little bit stronger. The biggest difference, honestly, between the two wheels for me is money for ease and maybe for brand recognition, because if you really have that kind of an ego and you have to be like, oh, I have a Bodner, well, your OSW's fine, but I mean, it's like, I don't really, the wheel delivers the same. The software when running was rock solid. It was just so much more effort. I mean, I honestly, if you got a Bodner, you would be up and running in half the time. You would be dialed into each sim in half of the time. But that's only your startup time. That's not your enjoyment once you're up and running. That's just that, you know, what are you talking? Even if you were talking 2 weeks to get all of your sims dialed in, as long as you have the capacity to do it, it's not going to be frustrating reading manuals, trying various different settings. It's only 2 weeks. I mean, by that point, you will have gone through and shaken down every single sim that there is. So I think that actually is great. I mean, I think for the money, that's worth it as long as you're techie enough to do it. Anything else, you guys? Yeah, boy the boy, my Bodner. No, I don't, but I do love the wheel. It's you know, I feel very lucky to have a Bodner. It's, you know, it's the go-to for, you know, the guys who are building pro sims right now. I think a lot of them are going to switch to this because they realize that same thing that we have in this review, bang for buck. But even them, if CXE went from the Bodner to this wheel, well, they're going to have to spend that much effort working out software versus the Bodner software, which just is a little simpler to use. So,
what I'm hearing though is that this is kind of an investment. It's not a purchase that you're going to make looking for sort of immediate enjoyment. It's something that you're going to be invested on. It's going to be something that's going to last you a decade plus. It's an investment.
Yep. Another example I could give you, comparison, I use bicycles and golf as my other examples. You know, and the other thing, when I do a review like this, I always feel like it's repetitive. It's like, I don't care if I'm talking about a G29. The wheel is built to deliver force feedback. Its job is to tell me bumps, curbs, road noise, loss of traction, brake lockup. All those features are built into every single wheel we use as long as it says force feedback. It's just a matter of strength and power and refinement, things like that. Well, you can go down to Sears, if they still existed in your town, and buy a set of Wilson clubs, golf clubs, and they're going to cost you, you know, $200-300. And you could go play great golf with them. And if you went down to the golf shop and bought a set of Callaways, they might cost you $3,000. And if you went and played a round of golf on those, you would be no better. At some point, you get to a point of diminishing returns on, do you have enough wheel to perform, versus now you're getting into, well, I played golf and I appreciate Callaway clubs. They're beautiful to look at when compared to a set of Wilson. You know the heritage, you know the, well, Wilson has heritage, but I mean, you know the current heritage, you know the tech behind it, you know all the things that separate the two because you're a connoisseur of the sport. Cycling, you can't get a bike at Walmart that's worth anything. But if you went to the bike shop and bought a $500 or $600 bike, you honestly could win races on that bicycle. But if you really did it all the time, you'd know you're on, like, the crap bike. You'd be like, oh, look at that. That guy's on a carbon fiber this, 10 grand. Oh, look at that guy. He's on a blah, blah, 5 grand. And you're there on your $500 bike. But it doesn't change your ability. Yes, those better bikes are faster by this much. Yes, they shift better by this much. But the core, the essence, what you really need is there even in that $500 bike, even in the $300 Wilson clubs, even in our traditional Logitech Thrustmaster and Fanatic wheels. I wouldn't be right if I didn't acknowledge and say that. Anything else?
But I have to say, the Plus, it's a small side pro, let's put it that way. But the plus of enjoyment which I have since I bought it, that's partially worth the price.
Yes, I agree. And the same thing, and that comes down to, I think you also have to be in a position to appreciate it. When we were talking about who is this wheel for, it's for the professional. Well, the amateur wouldn't even know what they were looking at. They don't know the difference. Yeah, they can tell metal from plastic, but they don't really know the difference. It takes being far enough into your sim racing world to even know that direct drive exists. It takes being far enough into your sim racing career to even realize that direct drive is what many of the professionals are using. Same thing with the clubs. If you got into golf, it wouldn't make a difference, but you played it all the time, it'd start to be pretty obvious that, oh, wow, they're the good ones and the okay ones.
I mean, especially after I was so frustrated with the G27. I had a Momo, a DFGT, a G25, another G25. I bought a G27, played it for 2 hours, ran a few times over curbs, and thought, oh no, why did they make it such a damn rattling shitbox? And it started to annoy me.
Yep.
That damn rattling of that damn wheel, Jesus Christ.
Well, and if you're on a $500 bike and you're in some real big climb and you're up against that guy and you have to drop a gear, you know what? That moment you hear that extra clink, that one extra revolution your chain took to make the gear change, and you heard how quick his went. And I think it's the same sort of thing. It's like, yes, head to head you're going to notice it, but I still, even an old G25, it'll be noisy, it'll be rough, but it'll still get the job done as long as everything's in operating order.
Yep, it was okay.
Any other questions, you guys?
Hey, Sean, this isn't necessarily for the review, but if a fire came along and destroyed all your sim racing equipment, would you buy this wheel?
Like, okay, I have to rebuild from scratch and it's out of my pocket.
And it's out of your pocket.
That is a really good question.
That is a good question.
Here's what my answer: if I had to completely salvage from scratch, the short answer is no. Because it would take away from too many other things in the initial build-up. And I don't want to wait 6 months of raising funds to be able to say, oh, this is the minimum wheel that I would drive. So no, the answer is no. I would, if everything burned down and I had to be sim racing tomorrow, I would buy a T300, maybe a CSL.
Oh, it hurts.
I would build a DIY rig. You know what? I would probably get a T300 because I don't need to get into the extra wheel rims even. It's like I'm in rebuild. You know what? A T300 is a great wheel. I have not one complaint about the wheel on the T300. It's the pedals. So if I was rebuilding from scratch, I'd get a T300. I'd do a Deathmobile out of whatever I could find on the side of the road. And then I would start upgrading from there. But then I'd be up and running on what I consider to be the bare... I mean, I'll win a race. Last night I had a great race. And this wheel was part of it. But at the same time, if my head had been in the game, a T300 would not have prevented that same performance. No way. No way.
Well, let's just say, like, you did get money from the insurance company, and you were able to buy the Bodner again, and you were able to buy that. Would you just go ahead and say, I'm buying a Bodner because it's the thing to do? Or would you buy that and save the money and invest that someplace else?
That's sort of the opposite question. So, like, if I won the lottery, I'd buy the Bodner. Why? It's simpler, and it's the most Callaway-esque, or the most refined. Buy. Oh, I have the best of the best. And it's like, even if it's not better, sometimes it's just bragging rights better. Sure.
Gotcha.
If I had a good job, for me, I would go this route. For John Hill, I would go Bodner. But that's because I can take the time to tech this out. I won't be frustrated by those things. But John Hill doesn't have that technical background. This wheel would... I would never let John have this wheel. So if I had 3 of these sitting here, and I was able to give one to John Hill, I'd be a fool to do so, because I'd have a nightmare of tech support. And I'm not... John, if you're watching, I'm not trying to fault John. I'm just saying John's not super technical. This wheel is for somebody who has some technical skills. Or isn't afraid.
What you described before was partially my way to the OSW. After I had enough from the G27 after around 2 years or so, I got the T300 relatively cheap. I thought, okay, this has to last till the OSW, and started putting $100 per month aside.
Yes. Yes, and that's the thing, getting to this starting from scratch, but this is sort of what I'm telling people all the time. It's like, if you watch my show and you're playing Forza on this, That's cool. That's awesome. I have no problem whatsoever with that. And I'd love to encourage you to buy a T300 to get further into our sport or hobby. And then from that point, if you really get the bug and you really want that higher level of appreciation, you're going to start considering that higher end market. But you won't ever need to. If right now, so I ran last night's race on this, if I put a T300 over there, it's only the pedals that would bother me. Yeah, the wheel would feel a little flexy. Yeah, it'd be kind of plasticky and cheap feeling. Yeah, the force feedback's kind of like non-existent. But all that I need is there. The wheel just is killing me, though. I have the secret drawer. Here, what else is in here? Ooh, old camera. Any other questions, you guys? Okay, Spatial, you said that. If I put a Nixon mod in a set of G27 pedals on a T300, I couldn't, you can't complain if that's your setup. You just can't. I have $5,000 to spend on a complete setup. What do you get? $5,000 to get my dreams, Bryce. Does that include computer or not? I can build a complete computer race ready for $1,200. I can buy 3 monitors for another $600. That puts me at $1,800 for my computer side of things. I need a rig. Let's buy an Rseat, $800. That puts me at $2,600. That leaves me $2,200 left over. I buy this for $1,500. That leaves me $7. I buy this. That leaves me $6. I buy the butterfly rim. I call it a butterfly, the formula rim. That leaves me $4. Buy a set of Fanatic pedals. There you go. Oh, didn't include computer. Well, then I can upgrade my wheel rim and pedal set. Yeah, but at $5,000, I can turnkey, including this, at that budget. Oh, I didn't include tax. And I did spend the whole budget. Any other questions? And did I answer your question fairly, Bryce? Well, before I bring this show to a close, I have to have a very special thank you. Number one, to all the patron team who helped me with this review, including all their great questions. I also have to thank William El Bucho Martinez, my good buddy. Met him in Long Beach, race with him all the time, hang out with him every day on Patreon or Discord. This is actually all his equipment. William ordered this brand new, had it... This is all his equipment. William ordered it brand new and had it sent here. I've had my dirty paws on this equipment for over a month testing it as William waits patiently at home for me to send it back. So I want to thank him as well. I hope in doing this way, you felt the passion that I really feel for the wheel. It wasn't just a clinical review. It wasn't just writing a book of a review, but it was a heartfelt, from my soul review of this wheel. And that's the kind of pattern of what I want to show you moving forward. So I hope in doing it that way, we did answer all of your questions and that you know everything you need to know about the Sim Racing Cube OSW wheel. And it has been my pleasure to test out William's wheel, and I will clean it up real nice and get it in the mail right away so he can start enjoying it at home. And from our end, we'll do a quick review on the Sim Racing Machine Fanatic adapter, because that will work with just about any open source or direct drive wheel that is available. So that is going to do it for today. Again, this was a first real live review, and I hope you enjoyed it. This is the Simpit. I'm Sean Cole, and I'll see you on the track. All right. All right.
That was cool, Sean. That was a good review. I like it. Thanks a lot, man.
Yay!
Was this worth doing like this? I mean, I don't know if this is worth it. I mean, I don't have to film them with you guys, but I figured it was cool. I mean, so...
definitely worth it.
Any comments?
I love the organic way of doing it. It's fantastic.
All right. Smash that. No, that's how I should have closed the show. All right. Any other comments on it all? I really thank you guys. You guys, I'm thinking that I'm gonna kind of like edit it a little bit, but I'm gonna leave the question and answer part for the most part. I mean, if you guys don't mind being on voice on camera, I think there was some relevant conversation there that continued it. So, I mean, I'm kind of thinking I'm gonna let it fly.
Yeah, nobody else does that on live reviews or any kind of review.
And it sort of becomes another
Start doing
silent
it.
patron perk, too.
Yeah, exactly.
And that they see that you guys were involved and that it was filmed live, right?
Exactly.
All right. Cool, cool.
Well, I feel like it's a justified purchase now.
Yeah, Bucho, this is a good wheel, man. You're really going to love this. You're really going to love this thing.
Yeah, I got to say, after I drove the Bodner hybrid at CXE, I pretty much was like, you know what, screw it, I'm buying one.
Laser cutter. Is that a T300? No, that's a Logitech. That's a G27, I think. Okay, Bryce, I agree. All right. Well, you guys, thank you. Here, I'm going to... Can I stop the stream?
I think so. I think you're done.
All right. Thank you, guys. I really mean it. Thank you. I'm still nervous. I can't wait to see it on the editing bay now and see how it comes together and see if I'm happy. You guys know how hard I am to please. It's hard for me to please myself, so we'll see. We'll see. And I'll let you know if I end up having to redo the whole thing or if I use this. I want to use this and see how I can make it work, and then you guys can watch the edited one and see if it did the wheel justice, if it was a good review, or if it seems rough, clunky, or uninformative. So those are always my fear and concern. So anyway, you guys, thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm, oh, it's over. It's over. All right. See you later. I'm still
Later, everybody.
I'm still